Hey, this is JB here with Tell Me You're Joking. This is my second edition of Substack Read, where I take a recent article that I wrote for my Substack page under the same title, Tell Me You're Joking. Really easy to find, pun intended. And I read it into a microphone so that you can listen to it through headphones or your car, or whatever you choose, and not bother with that archaic reading mechanism, eyeballs on a page. That's so yesterday. So I decided to increase the technology to the content and bring it to your audiophile ears here. Like I said, this is number 2, and this particular article that I'm going to read was really kind of a follow-up on some of the previous pieces that I've written touching on St. Louis from a why it matters, why people should live here, why I live here, and what we're missing maybe from a municipal, from a civic, from a corporate messaging standpoint as we try to stop the flow of people from leaving the region and trying to attract not only tourists but new residents, new businesses. Frankly, try to keep our kids from going to other cities, because that seems to be one of our greatest exports these days. I would know I have 3 of them, and one is in Nashville, and safe to say he's probably never coming home. So without further ado, episode 2 of Substack Reads. This article is titled St. Louis, the City That Just Lets You Live. Here we go. So I met a lot of people in the music scene from Nashville between the years of 2014 and 2020 who were telling everyone how amazing East Nashville was. They couldn't believe how affordable it was and were more than willing to talk about it a lot. They had walkable streets, they had indie coffee, they were close to industry, there was taco joints on every corner, and none of them took reservations because, that's lame. Then 2021 happened, and suddenly their cool, dingy neighborhood had a rooftop bar called something like The Perch and a Gulch-style guest list to match. Oh yeah, their landlord also tripled their rent. And now, a few years later, they're living in Murfreesboro, commuting past 3 Chick-fil-A's to get to work, and the neighborhood they moved to has a Warby Parker. Really. This is the story of every, quote, it city. And as the father of a Gen Z kid about to become a professional, I'm noticing they are quietly doing the math and looking to land somewhere that is less about the hype if they can't elevate fast enough. Because the overhead to be in or near opportunity, to see the haves all around you, but to not actually attain it because the fixed costs and inconveniences are far above the entry-level jobs, it's a financial reality they cannot overcome and are starting to not ignore. Let's talk numbers, because the numbers are almost embarrassing. Nashville's median home price right now is $470,000. East Nashville, the artsy part that made the city famous in the first place the last few years, sits at around $565,000. The Nations, which is an up-and-coming approximately 15 minutes ago, $585,000. Now, Denver's median hovers around $570,000. Austin, even after its post-pandemic hangover, remains north of $500,000. Meanwhile, St. Louis's median sale price is $250,000. That's 41% below the national average. You can buy a real house in a real neighborhood with a yard and original hardwood floors and a front porch for what people in those cities are putting down as a deposit. And know your entry-level pay will not be commensurately low to match the gap. You will win on the spread. Now, if you add a kid to the math, full-time infant daycare in Denver runs about $14.40 a month, which, asterisk here, a friend read the article, replied back and said, you're about $1,000 short on that. So it's closer to $2,500 to $3,000 a month, according to people on the ground. Austin is at $1,180, Nashville's at $1,150, St. Louis is just over $1,000. That gap, let's call it $150 to $400, maybe $600 a month, depending on your comparison city. It's a car payment, it's a vacation, it's a running tab at your neighborhood bar or gym for you Zers that don't party. Now, multiplied across the years before kindergarten, it adds up to real money. and it lands on top of a mortgage that's already several $100s a month cheaper than anything comparable in those markets. The quote, "it city hangover" is real, by the way. Austin home prices now, they sit 28% below their 2022 peak. And the 5 most lopsided buyers markets in the country are all in the Sun Belt: Miami, Nashville, Austin, San Antonio, and Las Vegas, which are all of those big old popular no state income tax havens. Take note, Missouri. The people who fled San Francisco for Austin are now considering their next move because affordable compared to San Francisco turns out to be a pretty low bar. Gen Z and millennials, who each account for nearly 30% of all interstate movers, are increasingly leaving higher cost metros for places where the pitch isn't just cheaper homes, it's the ability to build wealth earlier without drowning in the overhead. The easies nobody's selling you. Sorry, I can't even read my own words sometimes. St. Louis doesn't have a brand. It has neighborhoods. The Hill with its kitschy Italian families who've been making pasta since before your parents were born. Cherokee Street, which has evolved into one of the more genuinely eclectic stretches of small businesses, murals, and taco stands in the Midwest, has so far managed to resist becoming a theme park version of itself. Tower Grove, Benton Park, Shaw, Central West End, DeMun, etc. All are dense, walkable, full of houses that look like houses instead of stacked investment vehicles. Toss in a dozen or so record shops across the city that collectively know more about music than your entire Spotify algorithm, with neighboring James Beard eateries that still have walk-in bar seats available on a Wednesday evening. Hashtag winning. The schools, both public and private, are a genuine conversation, not a consolation here. Public-wise, Webster Groves, Kirkwood, Ladue, Clayton, a number of city schools, and more. You have all of those. Families move to these zip codes specifically the same way people move to specific neighborhoods in cities that cost 3 times as much, except here you can actually afford to live in them. For those that have the extra scratch and want exclusivity, you have SLU High, CBC, Corey Zoo, St. Joe, MICDS, Chaminade, etc. They're all pretty good too, and basically right next door to the public school option. If you have kids or plan to, the math keeps compounding in your favor here. For example, St. Louis has built one of the most decorated youth soccer and hockey ecosystems in the country. St. Louis Scott Gallagher, the product of a merger of 3 historic clubs, has won 15 national championships, consistently placed teams in the national top 20. The club has 275 teams from U6 to U20. Its alumni include soccer legends like Pat Noonan, Steve Ralston, Brad Davis, Will Bruin, Patrick Schulte, Matty DiMaria, Alex Pfeiffer, Tim Ream, Josh Sargent, and countless others. Your kids train at that exact same club without moving to a metro that charges $1,400 a month for daycare and 2 hours of round-trip commute time to get there. Which brings us to the commuter bonus. As a former Chicago resident, I feel this reality. Chicago drivers lost 112 hours to traffic congestion in 2025, nearly 5 full days, at a cost of over $2,000 per commuter. Los Angeles averages nearly 8 hours of congestion on a typical weekday. St. Louis roads are congested for just over 1 hour on average weekday. That's not a footnote. That's 10 to 15 hours a month. Return to your actual life. Time that people in other cities spend sitting on the 405 or the Dan Ryan listening to podcasts about how to be less stressed. But what will I do? Where will I go? Easy, if you're here. Forest Park is free every day and bigger than Central Park. There's 15 plus music venues nightly. They'll provide any genre you want. The Current River doesn't have a reservation system. The Ozarks are an hour south. Chicago, Memphis, Nashville, and Kansas City, they're all drivable on a long weekend without requiring a flight, a checked bag, or a second mortgage on your Delta miles. St. Louis made national lists for Gen Z job prospects precisely because it offers what one analyst at CNBC called the opportunity to get a start for a lower price and really feel like you have some roots and own something. That framing undersells it, honestly. Sticking with a house analogy here, owning something is the floor. The ceiling is a life that has room in it, room for hobbies, for weekends, for kids in elite clubs, for a house with a porch you actually get to sit on, because the overhead isn't eating everything else alive. Look, the rooftop bar crowd will find St. Louis's nooks and crannies eventually. They always do. The question is whether you want to be the person who got here first, bought the house, made a start, made it work, and was already a regular somewhere before someone else makes it TikTok famous and results in the bougie wait lists we all hate. All right, I'm out of here. Tell me you're joking. Substack reads. If you like me reading to you, keep listening. If you would prefer to read and not hear my voice, I'm over on Substack. Tell me you're joking. Spelled as it sounds. Until next time, see ya.